Chester. Right now, he is a very strong brawler. I really underestimated how strong that star power change would be. But the reality is, right now, Chester could easily be a top 5 brawler at almost everything. The only place where I don't see him is in Heist, and even there, I already saw him once or twice, and he did very well. And the thing is, Chester it is very strong because he is just crazy versatile. The fact that he has 5 different supers, it is just become something extremely annoying to deal with, because if you're not prepared to at least 3 of the supers, you have a very high possibility of he being able to counter you. Not to mention that he has an extremely high burst damage because of the 4 bells and also the 3 bells attack. And honestly, he also has a lot of HP. Because of all of these factors combined, Chester right now it is a S tier brawler. And because of that, I actually want to take back to how did this happen? How did he come here? Because he was bad like 2 months ago. How did he just suddenly become so good? Today we're going to take a deep dive into Chester's history, the buffs, the nerfs, and also some predictions about his future, because it's probably not going to be very good because of how strong he is. Let's start by talking about how the OG Chester actually was. And let me tell you, if you think that nowadays Chester was broken or he's very strong, well, the OG Chester was something completely different. To start off, he dealt 11% more damage, just like that, so if you think that he deals a lot of damage, well, he used to deal even more. Not to mention that his super cost back then was instead 6 hits from the nowadays 7 hits. And also, you know that very annoying tiny stun that Chester has? Well, back then it used to deal 6 times more damage, it used to charge 7 times more super, it dealt double the stun, and it was 33% faster. So, you know, a tiny bit stronger. It is crazy to think how freaking powerful that super was. It is discussable nowadays which Chester's super is the strongest, but back then, Chester's stun super was not just his best super, it was the best super in the entire game. That thing was busted. But because of that, there was one smaller weakness, let's call it that. His HP back then was different. Translated to nowadays, he would have 6600 HP. Why do I say translated? Because back when he was released, each level gave 5% bonus stats, not 10%, so that's why I am saying translated instead of the actual value, because the actual value was something different and hard to understand. Because of all of these changes, as you can possibly guess, Chester was like, if I remember correctly, like a top 3 brawler. He was extremely strong together with Gray back in the old days. He just destroyed everything. He literally won all 1v1 interactions. But as you probably already know, he got severely nerfed. That 11% bonus damage gone, and because of that, exactly because of that damage nerf, his super cost got indirectly increased from 6 hits to 7 hits, which is something that I don't think enough people talk about. Like, back when he was nerfed, no one talked about it, which is honestly very weird, but it is what it is. Jawbreaker, it is what it is nowadays. It got all of those nerfs just at once, and his HP was 6600. But with all of this being said, there is still one thing that I did not mention, which was the star powers. Start off, that star power that I don't really care about, like it didn't get a single buff or nerf. Why would it get a nerf? I don't know, but it didn't get a single change, so don't worry about that. What I am talking about, it is his first star power. Back then, it was the 4th row of bells, because back in the good old days, Chester actually only had 3 bell sequences, 1, 2, and 3, and this star power made it so it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, which was a very strong star power. But the thing is, that meant that his first row of bells would actually only deal 1600 damage, if I am correct. And that is obviously a weakness, because Chester has somewhat of a slow reload speed. So that meant that if someone was able to attack you during the 1 bell sequence, you would in 2 attacks deal around 3000 damage, which it is not a lot, it is actually somewhat of a weak damage, but because of the new first star power, that weakness does not exist, which as you can guess, it is something very strong. And back then Chester did not had this. And because of that, and because he had way much less HP, and after all of those nerfs, he very quickly went to the D tier because it was just very difficult to play with him. It was very easy to get countered, and it felt like neither one of his supers had any actual value. Yes, his 4th bell was really good, and that was the single reason why he was not F tier. That incredible burst damage was still good, it was just not enough. Because of that, Supercell did try to buff Chester before reworking his star power. He got like 2 HP buffs, which didn't really do much, although there was one point, if I remember well, where I think Chester was at the B tier in Kairos Pro tier list. But the reality is he was not strong by any means, and the bonus HP only really helped with his healing super, not star power. Because that meant that it was easier to pull out the heal without having as much risk. So technically with those HP buffs, it did help him out a bit at helping him achieve versatility, but the problem was still there, the counterplay was just devastating, and because of that he stayed in the C tier for a very long time. Eventually, as you already know, he got the star power rework, where now his single bell would always deal 200% damage. And that was a game changer. Now there is no counterplay. The only real counterplay that I can see it is if you're not a tank or assassin and if Chester gets the slowing super. That is literally like the only counterplay that I can see. Because all of the supers are extremely good and it feels like all of the supers help you to be aggressive, which is honestly very crazy to think about. Like for example, the Candy Popper destroys walls, so you gain immediate control of the map, it knocks enemies back and it deals crazy amount of damage. Not to mention that you can use it to in a certain way control where the enemy can or cannot run, which is very powerful. The Jawbreaker, it is a stun, so even if the enemy is somewhat far away, you can just easily approach them and 3+4 bell them and they're gone, out of existence literally. Salmiake, which is that toxic super, it deals an absurd amount of damage, and fun fact, I did the research, literally only hitting one person already charges your super by 50%. With this being said, hitting only 2 persons with that super immediately charges your entire super back, which it just helps him cycle the supers a lot, especially considering how much damage that super already does. And then you have Strong Mint, which is just very good to keep aggressive plays. You can just click on the heal and have not as much trouble to approach people. But for sure, Strong Mint it is the weakest of all the supers. From the strongest supers, because we also have Pop Rocks, an absolute joke right there. But even Pop Rocks can be somewhat useful if an assassin tries to approach you or to gain a little bit of area control. Like that is literally the only 2 things, but Pop Rocks it is really useless. Like if you get it, just try to use it behind a wall to get some value, because if I am correct, literally 1 tick of a Pop Rocks damage, it is already enough so that you'll need 1 less attack to get the super. Because you need 7 hits to get the super because of literally like 2%. And Pop Rocks, for each hit, it gives you 4% of the super. So all of those together mean that by hitting 1 tick of slow means that instead you need 6 hits to get the super. Which, as you can already guess, that is already a really good help. If you land 1 tick, which is not that hard if you go behind a wall. So, as you understand, all of the supers have a purpose, and even the weakest have some utility, which is just crazy powerful. Now that we already discussed Chester's present and past, we now gonna talk obviously about his future. what changes do I think that Supercell might do to him, and what changes I think that he actually needs. Both of them really important, honestly. But starting off with the most basic and simplistic one, what changes he is most likely to receive? He's for sure going to receive a nerf to his first star power. If I had to guess, they're probably gonna reduce the bonus damage from 200% to 150%. And they might also, with that nerf, or maybe without it, who knows, they might also reduce his HP from 7,400 to 7,200. Or if they only nerf the HP, they might reduce it to 7,000. And honestly, they are not horrible changes, but I feel like they would just make Chester as a whole a little bit less fun, because the idea is just to get as many supers, cause chaos throughout the map, have the whole RNG. But Chester right now is only strong because he just deals a lot of damage, and he also has a lot of HP, and all of the supers are just way too strong. So like, I feel like that would fix the problem, but it would in a certain way make Chester a little bit less fun. So now I will say what changes I actually want to him. So to start off, I do want his first star power to be nerfed from 200% to 150%, but that's it. With that being said, all of the supers need changes. And start off with all of the supers, the super cost would be decreased from 7 hits to 6 hits. These would immediately change a couple interactions, as I mentioned, because, for example, Pop Rocks would actually be indirectly nerfed with this change, which is kind of fun when you think about it. So, now about the actual supers. Start off, Candy Popper needs a clear nerf. Not very specific, but somewhat important. The recharge rate will be reduced from 47% to 40%. So now, even if you hit 2 enemies, you still need 2 hits to get the super. This is important because I am nerfing recyclability of supers. Besides that, the damage that he dealt would be reduced from 3,760, which is honestly a lot, to 3,240, which is in total a 13% damage nerf. I don't think it is too much because it breaks walls, it goes over walls, so it should stay honestly very well balanced, this super. Next on the list we have Jawbreaker, and honestly, I know that this super needs a nerf, but like it feels like all of the aspects of the super had already been nerfed. Like, I'm not gonna nerf a 1 second stun to like 0.7 second stun, I'm not gonna do that. So instead I tried to come up with the closest possible thing to a stun. So now the super would knock enemies back, slow them down, and also silence them for 1 second. Hopefully with these changes, Jawbreaker just becomes a tiny bit weaker, because if an enemy approaches you, he can still try to run away so that you don't hit, like, for example, all the 4 bells, you only hit like 2 or 3. And for example, this also makes it a little bit worse at longer ranges because they're not stunned. You cannot just easily approach them. They can still run away at least a little bit. So with these tiny, I don't know how tiny it would be, honestly, but I don't think it would kill the super, but it would still be very strong still. And who knows, maybe the knockback could have some extra utilities that I might not be thinking about. But as for the nerfs to Jawbreaker, that would be it. Next, we have Salmiakki. And Salmiakki, the poison super, would only have its charge rate reduced from 7.25% to 6%. This is again nerfing recyclability of the super, which is the main thing that the super has, besides the pure amount of damage, of course. So this means that literally for every single enemy that you hit, you need an additional projectile to get the super. If my math is mathing, you still only need 1 projectile even if you hit 2 people, so it's not that bad. I think it's still a nerf, but it would not be for sure the most drastic of them all. Now let's talk about the supers that would actually get some buffs. And starting off, you obviously have Pop Rocks. Pop Rocks, it is useless. Not only that, as I accidentally indirectly nerfed him by making the charge rate go from 7 to 6, which is just, he's just crazy. Imagine nerfing Pop Rocks, how crazy would that be? So talking about its buffs, the range would be increased from 3 tiles to 4 tiles because it just needs to happen, that thing is useless. So if I am correct, it would be somewhat closer to a loose super in terms of range. On top of that, the damage would be increased from 320 to 480. And also the recharge rate would be increased from 4% to 6%. So you would only need 3 ticks of slow instead of like 4 in order to need less one hit to get the super. So a buff to the recyclability of the super. Not to mention that the super dealing more damage, it just helps the area control to be a lot more efficient. I still remember back in the old days where Chester had that bug that he used the slowing super also, but there was another extra that bug that not as many people knew, is that the slowing super actually dealt tons more of damage if you use the candy popper. If I remember correctly, it used to deal like 2000 damage per second, so you would be dead if you come close to that. I don't want obviously to make that area deal 2000 damage per second, but you get where I'm trying to go with, making that area control actually effective. Finally, we have Strong Mint. The heal would be completely changed. Instead of having a 1 second delay and heal 4000 HP over 3 seconds, now you would instantly heal 2k HP and then heal 3k HP over 6 seconds. So it takes longer to get the full heal, but at least you have some instantaneous heal. My honest problem with healing men is that in the first 1 to 2 seconds it is absolutely useless. You can die so easily, and honestly I don't get what's really the idea with Strong Mint. It is very good to keep the pressure, but you need to wait for the pressure to actually be there. And Strong Mint only lasts 3 seconds, so it is not very effective at keeping the pressure. And there you have it. My predictions, the present and the past of Chester, all in the same damn video. Honestly, I have played Chester so much for so long, it is literally the only character that I have at Gold 3, so I know very well what I am talking about. I still play Chester quite a lot nowadays, but I don't want to see my boy burn to the ground like how it happened last time. So all I hope is that Chester does not get trashed immediately. Please, Supercell. Thank you for watching. We also have a server Discord link where you can leave your ideas on video suggestions that I am always checking out. Do not worry, there are a couple ideas that I do want to do in the near future. So join the Discord link in the description. Subscribe, like, honestly, do all of the things. I don't need to tell you that you have watched to the end, so I assume you liked the video. Hopefully. Thank you so much, and I'll see ya on the next video.